was asked to talk about extroverted, avoidant people because they seem like a unicorn, maybe. Like, how's that even possible? I just made a video about how there are variations, and always keep that in mind. That avoidant personality disorder and avoidance is not necessarily in any way, shape, or form introversion. Introversion and extroversion are sort of separate, totally separate things. Now, an introverted person, basically they get their energy, their drive, their motivation, they sort of build themselves up when they're alone. And if they're not alone and they're constantly crammed in with other people, it absolutely drains them and they become depressed. Extroverted person is basically the complete opposite. They get their energy from people, and if they are all alone, that makes them depressed because they have no energy left. By energy, I mean sort of like the will to live, the will to live. Basically, that's what it is. The best sort of image I ever had for an introvert is in Harry Potter. There are these things called Dementors, which are supposed to suck somebody's soul out of them, and the visual is perfect. That is what introversion is. If you're an introverted person and you're stuck around other people, you can feel them sucking the energy out of you. You just get tireder and tireder, and you feel like you're shrinking. And when you're extroverted, it's the other way around. Being around people just jazz you up and energize you. And now the thing is that those are, first of all, kind of archaic terms. And they're inexact. And there are variations on those. It's sort of like a spectrum, is how they put it now, that you could be 80% extroverted but then 20% introverted. In other words, human. So there, and unfortunately, avoidant personality disorder, well, you do have to have some sort of genetic predisposition for it, and then you need to have the history, the childhood emotional trauma, and unfortunately, that trauma can happen to anybody. Whether you're extrovert or introverted, anybody can have that kind of past, which would lead to avoidance. Now, the thing is, if somebody is more extroverted, their avoidance might be masked. For example, which I don't really talk about people, but my sister, who of course grew up in the exact same situation I did, is an alcoholic. And she's an active alcoholic, and she doesn't think there's anything wrong with it, and she just thinks that's totally cool. And I mean, she doesn't drink a little. She drinks a lot. And, she's avoided jail. She's never had DUI that I'm aware of. Who knows? She gets away with it. So that's her coping technique. That's what she does. And who knows? Maybe she does have a touch of of avoidance. And it is masked by the alcohol, which lets her sort of express herself without having, the thoughts and the filters. Now, I am kind of the opposite. If I drink, then I get unbelievably down on myself. So that's not a really good option for me. I don't get boisterous. I get even more introverted and down on myself. But so I guess that's one way of looking at it, is that maybe extroverted, avoidant people find coping techniques that let them be in the world and let them mask the avoidance better. Um, because a lot of people, I mean, I have a son, which means, there was a period in my life when I was not so completely, totally isolated. There are avoidant people that get married. There are avoidant people that have jobs and everything else. They're very stressed. They're very unhappy, but they get through it. So it's not everybody is so completely, totally isolated. And the thing is that people also forget. They're like, you forget how isolated people can really get. You get an avoidant person and they'll be talking about, yeah, well, I've got a girlfriend and I've had a girlfriend and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, you realize that when it comes down to it, basically, without, having the polls, it appears to me about a third of avoidant people live with their families, like, their mother and father. They never leave the house. A third of the people live with a significant other, and a third of the people live alone, completely. That appears to be my unofficial sort of polling that I've done for years and years. And everybody seems to think that that is, well, how they do it. I mean, of course, that's how people do it. They don't think there's anything, the people who are in romantic relationships don't think there's anything weird about that at all. And the majority of people who are avoidant are incapable of being in sustained relationships. So, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Now, for me, I think I definitely have an extroverted streak because I do get sort of a hit off of being around people as long as they're not interacting with me at all. As long as, but being, I mean, I don't want somebody like up on me. That's different. And I don't like being in places where I feel like I'm being judged. So places like going shopping, where every single choice that I make, somebody might be looking, going, what the heck are you doing with that? But places where people are just people, like going to a park, as long as nobody's paying any attention to me at all. I'll actually, do that type of stuff. Like I mean, I don't do it often, maybe once a year. I'll go to a movie by myself, which a lot of people are like, oh my God, you're going to be judged. I'm like, I don't care. By myself in a nearly packed, again, I don't want people like right up on my elbows, but, pretty full, more than half full movie theater, and watch a movie with other people. And I know of people that would not be able to do that. Things like, I like going to sort of community celebration things, like to fireworks or something like that. And other people are like, oh my God, so many people, I would not be able to do that. And I think those people are maybe a little less extroverted. But then you get other people who are like, avoidant people who avoidant people who are performers and are in bands or something like that. There's kind of sort of a group of avoidant people who are teachers. Same thing. They're basically performing in front of people. Although avoidant teachers usually need smaller classes. They can't do like the giant. By giant, I mean more than 15. Small classes. But again, it's because they're around people and they're talking about something that is not themselves. And they can do that. And they can get the energy off of the people that they're teaching. As opposed to it, so it's not draining because they're not talking to themselves, and that is the thing with avoidant people. If you are an avoidant and an extrovert per se, then you can be around people as long as you don't talk about yourself. But as soon as you start like delving into personal stuff, or even speaking at all, that's when the avoidance kicks in big time. And then you're stuck because you're with a person. You know, I mean, the other side of it is somebody who is, let me actually ask, you know, how can you still be avoidant if you're not interacting with somebody at all? You know, how do you know? And it's like, because you still have all those thoughts going through your head, those totally inadequate thoughts, where you think that you're the worst thing on the planet, and, you know, probably good luck to all those people, and didn't they dodge a bullet that they could have been dealing with me, but they're so lucky that they chose not to. That happens all the time when you're alone. Plus, you know, I mean, even if it's an introverted avoidant person, they still wish they could be with somebody else. I don't think, I think that drive can sort of not be as extreme, because with an introverted person, if you're avoidant and you have that desire to be with people, it's sort of like a low-key, low thing. It's like a low energy. It's constantly there. It drives you crazy, but it's like low energy. If you're extroverted, it's being a, you know, it's if you were seeing an electric meter for an introverted avoidant person who is alone, it's ticking, but it's going slowly. For an extroverted avoidant person who is alone, it's like they feel like they're jumping out of their skin, and they feel like the energy is just pouring out of them, and it's like going. Well, that's really doesn't work that. It's ticking so much faster, because being alone, they can't recharge their batteries alone. They have to be around people. So it does kind of seriously suck. But that happens. That absolutely happens. And those, like I said, those people, I think that they find different coping techniques. And I think that they force themselves to basically find terribly selfish people that only want to talk about themselves. And then, you know, because if you're with somebody who's yapping about them, you're with another person, you don't have to disclose anything about yourself. I mean, there are a lot of really selfish people in this world, and that is a very unlikable trait. Fact. So they end up with people somehow, and that's usually what it is. Somebody that doesn't want to talk about themselves, but they want to be with somebody. Bingo, perfect, selfish person. I mean, there we go. They're going to talk about themselves all the time, and then they don't have to, you know, come up with anything in return. I mean, it's disheartening if they never break from that selfishness, and they're just 100% always, you know, me. That, even if you're extroverted, gets a little, but that's one way around it. So, obviously, I think that if you're extroverted versus introverted, you're more likely to be in a partnership of some sort, whether it's a good one or a bad one. That's a different matter. I think you're more likely to be out of the house. I think that you're more likely to, I mean, again, this is unofficial, I've never seen anything, I think you're more likely to use substances to help you cope and to mask the avoidance and stuff it down. So I think that the people who talk are more likely to be introverted because they have fewer outlets. So I think that's why there's the impression that there's more introverts, but I think that there are definitely extroverted avoidants out there, even though, you know, they're not, as bizarre as it sounds, they're not as visible because they're not exhibiting the isolation as much as an introverted avoidant would, but they're still avoidance. They've just got, you know, it's a different variation on it.